turned to doing the felony filing for the central and eastern part of Contra Costa County, I was really shocked to see the proliferation of organized retail theft and then also the theft from just commercial businesses and the impact of that and the vandalism and um, crimes that are termed quality of life, but they're really essential um, to eliminate for businesses to have important quality of life.
So when you say one felony filing, there's a lot of when you interview people who are in the in the DA's office or in law enforcement, they use terms. So felony filing, for those that don't know what that is or that
Sure.
process, what is that?
So when the police make an arrest and then they write their police reports, they put together a filing package. And
Okay.
then I was assigned to review all of the felony case submissions for all of East County and Central County. So when the police officers, make an arrest and then they present the case to the DA's office,
Mm-hmm.
then I would review for charging.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Good. So you mentioned quality of life crimes, and that's a term that been used by all kinds. What are some of those issues that you're seeing come across through the DA's office that are that quality of life crime category? Because I know it's not at least I don't believe it is a legal category. It's just kind of a term that's been used. So what are some of those charges?
That's correct. And I think that our quality of life crimes, frankly, have changed a lot in the past, um, basically pandemic years,
Mm-hmm.
and with the proliferation of homelessness. For example, vandalism, watching stores in downtown Concord with 6 businesses with their plate glass windows shattered with river rocks. Um,
We actually here at the chamber office, we had 5 of our windows, and matter of fact, this morning the guy who broke them was sitting on the bench in front. So
yeah,
I can relate to that.
No, and it's when you think about the impact that that has on a business, not just the cost to replace the windows
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps the impact it has on your insurance, but also if you have your windows boarded up, what kind of a message is that sending to your customers?
Yeah.
And frankly, the people who are usually doing these window smashes are, it's homeless. There's a mental health component involved, and so we need to start by filing charges in those cases. Then if it's someone who's homeless with mental health issues, then we can connect them up with the services that are out there to help them regain their mental health, and connect them with the really crucial services so that we stop these cycles of just crimes being committed over and over and over again. We need to get to the root causes of them.
So how do you see the DA office and the business community working together?
Quite frankly, the DA's office needs to start filing charges once the police make arrests. There's been a significant increase in what we call NCFs, no complaint filed. Even though the police are bringing in cases that are provable, we could prove them in court. Decisions are being made. For example, I'd never seen this in my career. Arrest was enough. So
What do you mean arrest was enough? Like
that
that was the punishment was just being arrested was enough.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So and throughout my career, I've been very focused on advocating for victims' rights. And with not filing property crimes, we have this massive class of victims now who will never, they're entitled to restitution under California law. They have the constitutional right to restitution, and also to have a voice throughout the criminal justice process. By not filing charges, we are effectively denying all of these crime victims their constitutional rights.
Well, wow, I have not thought of that before. That's problematic for sure. So the how can the business community, let's say your campaign is successful and you're elected, how can you help change the interaction between the business community and the DA's office, or how can the business community have more a seat at the table, maybe in policy making or however it works at the DA's office?
So, for example, under the current DA, Um, prosecutors are prohibited from filing um, theft offenses under $300, even as misdemeanors. So, as DA, I would eliminate that policy. I would eliminate the policy that requires DAs, when they're filing, to consider whether or not looters needed the thousands of dollars of merchandise that they race out of stores, the armloads of merchandise. All of those policies, that was just something implemented by the current DA. It's not state law, but those policies would be eliminated. Our office would follow the law and file charges on the theft offenses that are occurring in the businesses. And so I would encourage business owners to continue or begin again calling the police to file the police reports. I know it takes a lot of employee time to do that, but we need to have people arrested and file the charges, and the business community should feel supported and be supported by the DA's office.
So you mentioned something because had the other interview, and I definitely want to make sure everybody knows the chamber doesn't endorse candidates staying, impartial. But you'd mentioned that the policy is that if determining whether there was a need to have, that's why they stole the. And correct me if I'm wrong. That the policy is that if there's a need to loot or steal, that is kind of factored into prosecution. And DA Beckton said that is not the policy. The need is really like life and death. Like if I didn't steal this water, I was going to die. And you're saying that that's different.
It is different.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. So there's difference on the need thing. So, what are the challenges you see the business community facing right now? Some of those I know I've followed you around. I've seen you at different business events, and you've been working with different chambers. What throughout the county? What's kind of the universal challenges that you're seeing businesses face?
I think the challenge that I hear most often is the inability of like loss prevention officers within stores
Mm-hmm.
to stop people who are leaving their stores with their arm loaded full of, for example, stacks of jeans,
Mm-hmm.
or with their backpacks filled with bottles of high end liquor waltzing out of Safeway, and people just standing back, or the shopping carts filled with the massive containers of Tide. All of this merchandise is being resold on a black market. These are not shoplifters. And so I totally feel their frustration. But I think that we need to think of creative ways that we can begin to change the message that's very clearly been sent to people who are stealing this merchandise to resell it, that there are going to be consequences. Maybe we have a communication method set up with local police departments and businesses, so we have sort of a strike force,
Mm-hmm.
that when someone's seen loading a cart inside Safeway or inside Home Depot, that police departments can respond within seconds or minutes and apprehend them.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't put the onus of having some physical altercation between the loss prevention officers and the suspects, who are frequently armed. It would be very dangerous for there to be any intervention between non-law enforcement and the thieves. But I think that we can think of creative ways that we can better respond to the thefts while they're in progress and actually have arrests made at the scene.
Right, and I'm glad you brought the armed part up because I don't think it's anything that district attorney's office has done, regardless of who's in it, that have made stores have policies of kind of a hands-off approach. It's a safety issue, and nobody gets paid enough to put their life on the line for Tide. So all these creative ideas, is there anything else that you can see the DA office being able to help with that, or?
Boy, I would be willing to, sit down at the table with every chamber and think of ways. I think that our ideas improve the more we discuss,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very confident that we can think of creative ways to turn this around.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna have to ask a tough question here. You're running against your boss, correct?
Correct.
that I think is probably could be intimidating. Not saying that she's intimidating you, but just knowing that you're basically saying that you can do a better job than your boss. How has that gone, and why do you feel that you could do a better job?
I know I can do a better job. I've been a prosecutor for 37 years. In essence, I've been training for this job for 37 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked in every criminal division in the DA's office. I've supervised misdemeanor teams. I've supervised, for example, the homicide unit. I've created new divisions of our office. I've run divisions of our office. I've made all of the decisions up and down the chain of command. So I'm very comfortable with the administration part of this. But I also am still trying cases. I just prosecuted the man who murdered Suzanne Bombardier in 1980 after kidnapping and raping her. And so I'm in court every day with the other attorneys in the office. And for the past decade, I've actually been in charge of the attorney training within the office so that we develop our prosecutors' skills so that when we are in trial, that we have attorneys who are experienced, who make good decisions, who make good judgment calls, and who are committed to the public safety in Contra Costa County. So I do believe I can do a better job. The current DA has literally never prosecuted a case. So I believe that experience matters, and I bring the experience that's required to be an effective DA and an effective leader.
So you mentioned public safety, kind of a spin-off of, we've been focusing on business. I know sometimes people say, well, human life is more important than money, and I agree on that, but businesses are important. But with public safety, I think many who live out here in East Contra have seen a change when it comes to safety and the types of crimes that we're seeing in the news. What have you seen in East Contra Costa County as far as crime and the change, or maybe there isn't change? I don't know.
I The crime to me has become exponentially more serious. For example, three teenagers were almost kidnapped off the streets and robbed of their cell phones in Brentwood this week. Something crimes that we would never have seen. A murder in broad daylight in downtown Brentwood. In Pittsburgh, the carjackings. The In Antioch, a truck backed through the wall of a cell phone store.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the credit union whose ATM was basically ripped apart. The crime has become very brazen, and this failure to prosecute has sent a very clear message to criminals who, frankly, used to avoid Contra Costa County. People did not come to Contra Costa to commit crimes, but that has all essentially changed. Much of the organized retail theft and the looting that happened in Central County was all organized on social media, and those looters came in from outside of Contra Costa County. And I believe that all began when the 2019, frankly, the massacre in the Airbnb in Orinda on Halloween night. Three different gangs involved, and a massive amount of social media evidence and video from the interior of that house. And the current DA declined to file charges in that case. When I was homicide unit supervisor, if a case came in that I thought was not ready to file, then I would use the investigators in our homicide unit that work for the DA's office to help the agency who was investigating the case to improve the investigation to the point where we could file charges. But the message was sent very loud and clear that gang crimes and the bloodiest homicide scene in Contra Costa's history would not be prosecuted. And I think that that message has continued over the past 3.5 years. And crime has come to Contra Costa, and it's time to reverse that.
So, kind of follow up on that, kind of an unscripted question as you talked about that. So I know, with crime, you have law enforcement, you have the DA, and then you have the judicial, and they all kind of work together. And how do you see the DA's office? I know well, we're going to prosecute more, but is there, DA Becton talked about different policies that she's helping to get through legislation at the state level. Are there things that you would like to do it, kind of the same to help with that? And what are they? And how do you see as a DA being able to help draft and change policy, regardless of what policy?
Sure. Um, well, for example, as you talked about law enforcement and the judiciary,
Mm-hmm.
um, I believe it's the DA's obligation. Well, the DA is the chief law enforcement officer in the county, and the DA has to be able to work collaboratively with law enforcement for um, the prosecution process to work effectively. And I'm honored to be endorsed by every police association within Contra Costa County and by Sheriff Livingston. So I believe I have the working relationship with law enforcement to make this process more effective. And I'm also a member of the California District Attorneys Association. It's the statewide association for prosecutors.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to advance legislation within the legislature to reverse some of the change brought about by Proposition 47, which set the $950 threshold on filing felonies and property crimes. That needs to be reversed. And so I will work collaboratively with CDAA as I have in the past. The current DA is not a member of CDAA. She is a member of the Prosecutors Alliance. She is literally in an alliance with Chesa Boudin, the uh, DA in San Francisco, and George Gascon, the DA in Los Angeles. They call themselves the Prosecutors Alliance, which I think is kind of ironic since none of the three of them have ever actually prosecuted a case. And so, if you'd like to know what the current DA's philosophies are and the legislation that the three of them are advancing as the Prosecutors Alliance, you just need to log into their website to see which legislation they have sponsored.
Okay. And so, with that being said, what business and private citizen, how, if elected, how would you engage them to help, with the DA office? With Diana Becken, when I asked that question, she talked about some of the community programs that she has and that she's continuing to bring forward. How would you engage with businesses in the community to help in the work of the DA office?
So, I believe that Ms. Beckton might have been discussing a restorative justice program
Correct.
that she ran on a platform of bringing restorative justice programs to this county in 2018. And you can easily research this, but this restorative justice program did not exist until about a month ago. So, 4 years later, um, the only reason, frankly, that appears to have happened is because this election was pending, and she would not have followed through with that campaign promise. But we do not have a thriving restorative justice court or neighborhood program in place. Also, with regard to juvenile diversion programs, the RISE program in West County is basically in charge of that juvenile diversion program, um, and it's servicing the kids from West County. But how do the kids from Brentwood or Oakley or Antioch or Pittsburgh get themselves to Richmond to participate in the program? And so I think it's really important, and it was part of the push within the request for Measure X funding that juvenile programs need to be instituted in East County,
Mm-hmm.
that East County kids have physical access to. And so we have had throughout my entire career in the DA's office, we've had multiple different diversion programs, which means that once someone is charged with a crime, that then they are referred to programs to address the underlying root cause of the problem. For example, if it's drug related, then there's a court ordered drug diversion program. And so you go into drug treatment, and when you're successful, then the criminal charges are dismissed. So there are theft diversion programs that involve community service and also education programs behind what's the impact of the theft on the retailers and things like that. So I would absolutely work with the business community to develop programs. And for example, it might involve community service to help the businesses. and improve the relationship between, for example, sometimes teenagers make bad judgment calls.
Sure.
But
I
that's
think we
what,
can all relate to that.
yeah, certainly. But that's what our juvenile probation department is for. They are the juvenile justice system is very different than the adult system. The police bring cases to the DA for filing, but when a juvenile commits a crime, the police take the arrest reports to juvenile probation, and they have a large number of diversion programs, and they divert the we call them minors out of the criminal justice program, and then only in the more egregious cases or in recidivist crimes, juvenile probation makes a referral to the DA's office for filing. So I used to run our juvenile unit, and so I'm very familiar with juvenile probation and how that works, and would continue to support their efforts to divert the minors out of the criminal justice system.
Are there any changes you would make to these existing programs? Because I think it would be fair to say that existing programs may not be getting the results we need, or as the world changes, programs need to be revamped. What are
Sure.
some changes you would make to these existing programs? Because I would say that a lot of programs that come from the government are broken, right? We're not getting the results. So, what are some changes you would make?
I think working more closely with community based organizations that tend to have a more accurate focus on current issues within communities, current issues with teens, um, and so they may have a better view of what can be more effective
Mm-hmm.
in helping people who have become involved either in the juvenile justice system or the adult. So I think the community based organizations bring a tremendous amount of good to the table. And the Measure X funding that was just approved by the supervisors to a large number of new community based organizations could be a great partnership with the DA's office in, sort of reimagining how we're doing things. We can always improve, and we should always be open to changes to make ourselves more effective.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time and coming in and sharing, what you're campaigning on and your ideas and all that. So, for those that have not made a decision yet, I know ballots were sent home and people are starting to think about who they should vote for. Why should people vote for Mary Knox?
Because I believe that once we restore public safety to Contra Costa County, we can start to engage again in improving outcomes for everyone. For example, I was on the steering committee and part of the boots on the ground implementation of the Youth Justice Initiative that focused on reducing the expulsion and suspension rates in the middle schools in East County. We actually were in the Antioch Middle School, and we brought, frankly, it was a little eyebrow raising at the time.
I used to teach at Antioch Middle
Yeah.
School. That's kind of interesting to hear that.
Yeah, so the climate on that campus was very it was violent. There
Mm-hmm.
were large numbers of expulsions and suspensions, and so we brought trauma informed training to all of the staff at the school. We brought mindfulness into the classrooms so that kids who were at school who, for example, had witnessed a homicide the night before or had a search warrant served at their house, that were very emotionally triggered and expected to be sitting in class and behaving, to start unwinding some of that trauma. We created a wellness room at Antioch Middle School so the kids could check themselves out of class when they were feeling triggered. So it was really a rewarding experience. It was very much, some people called it out there, bringing all of this
If you don't try,
newness.
you'll never know.
Yeah, and so it was really really enjoyed working with John Gimno, and um, by the end of that school year, the suspensions and expulsions had been dramatically reduced, and it's become the model for the middle schools. And so I think we have to be open to new and innovative ideas for crime prevention, crime reduction, and also focusing on um, creating environments where our youth have opportunities available to them, so they don't become gang involved and drug involved. And so we can't prosecute ourselves out of drug addiction and gang involvement, but we can change the mindset of kids who may be very vulnerable to becoming gang or drug involved. So I'm really excited to not only restore public safety, but to improve the future of Contra Costa County.
Awesome. Now, if people want to learn more about you, your platform, and just get in touch with you, where should they go?
So my website is maryknox4da.com. That's number 4da.com. And there are endorsements on the website, which think are, they're not the usual necessarily just endorsements from elected officials and the like. It's endorsements from people that I spent my whole career working with, and comments about my effectiveness as a prosecutor, comments from victims, comments from witnesses, so that you can truly learn a little bit more about me and what I will bring to the table as your DA.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we thank everybody that's tuned in and watched this. There will be another interview in a little bit. We have candidate Ben Terrio, who's running for Contra Costa County Sheriff. But again, Mary, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your comments and your platform with everybody. And we hope that it helps people as they make a decision on who they vote for. And wish everybody a good afternoon.